Commander James Donovan stood at the observation deck of Defense Station Atlas, watching the calm world of New Haven spin below. 2 million people lived down there, families who had traded Earth's noise for farmland, clean skies, and a steady life built on rich soil and endless mineral veins. From up here, the colony looked almost too peaceful. Trains moved along glittering tracks carrying ore to refineries, drones loaded grain onto cargo freighters in perfect rhythm, and kids could be seen playing near the city parks where sunlight reflected off their glass fountains like tiny stars. James took another slow sip of bitter coffee, trying to shake off a late-shift hangover and wondering for the 100th time why anyone thought this place needed a full orbital defense station when nothing had happened out here in 20 years down. In the communications pit, Lieutenant Karen Simmons ran through her morning checklist with one eye on the clock. She was 2 hours from ending her shift and had already texted her sister about visiting later that afternoon. Her nephew had started crawling last time she saw him, and she planned to spoil him with a new hover toy she had smuggled from orbit. She smiled at the thought, unaware that her console's sensors were about to scream in protest. The alert hit exactly at Oro 9:30, and it hit like a sledgehammer. Energy signatures flared at the edge of the system, so massive and chaotic that Karen thought the scanner had malfunctioned. She rebooted the system, reran the scans twice, then stared as her data confirmed it was real. Hundreds of hyperspace. Wakes were materializing beyond the outer rim. Too many to be a trade fleet, too organized to be random debris. Her mouth went dry, her fingers trembling over the comms panel as she flagged the contact with an emergency tag and pinged Command James. Stormed into the control center, mug still in his hand, and one look at her screen turned his stomach into a brick. The ships coming out of hyperspace were nothing like human designs. They had no identification codes, no radio chatter, no registration markers, and their shapes twisted like living things, all sleek curves and faint glowing lines that pulsed, as though they had heartbeats. He had seen classified images like this before, images from colonies that didn't exist anymore. The Vraxx had found them, and every person in this room knew what that meant. Karen's hands shook as she patched into the emergency broadcast system. Her voice echoed across every device on the planet, breaking the soft calm of a normal day with words no one had expected to hear here. Enemy fleet detected. All civilians evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. She finished the transmission and sat back, staring at the screen as if maybe, just maybe, this was all some elaborate training exercise she had forgotten about. On the surface, Ryan Harper, head of Colonial Evacuation Services, froze mid-sip of his morning coffee when sirens wailed across New Haven. His office wall screen lit up with red banners and tactical feeds showing wave after wave of alien signatures streaming toward their world. He swore under his breath, dropped the mug, and pulled up the emergency evacuation protocols he had hoped he would never see outside a simulation. Those plans had been built for 72 hours of controlled loading and transport, but looking at the swarm of enemy contacts, he knew they would be lucky to have 70 minutes. He opened every emergency channel at once, his voice steady despite the hollow dread in his chest. All civilian aircraft and spacecraft are now conscripted for evacuation duty. Priority is children, elderly, and medical cases. No baggage, no personal cargo, just warm bodies and seats. Get them off the ground as fast as possible. Behind him, his team scrambled into action, activating old cargo shuttles, calling private pilots, even registering small passenger yachts as emergency transports. He didn't bother asking anyone for approval, because in less than an hour, approval would be meaningless. Up in orbit, James stared at his tactical display, watching the alien formation creep toward them like an unstoppable tide. His fleet was laughable compared to what was coming. 3 frigates and 2 destroyers, good enough for chasing smugglers or scaring off pirates, but useless against a fleet of hundreds. He knew exactly what the Vraxx did to planets. The reports weren't even classified anymore because no one survived long enough to keep secrets. Cities liquefied, whole ecosystems stripped in days, and every single human unlucky enough to be there reduced to sludge in feeding pits. James clenched his jaw and looked at his officers. "Signal all captains. We're not stopping them, but we're buying time. As much as we can." And deep down, every single person in that room knew those words meant one thing. They were about to fly straight into their own deaths. The evacuation sirens howled through every city on New Haven, their harsh tone cutting through morning calm like a blade. Parents yanked their kids from beds, people spilled out of apartments clutching whatever they could grab, and traffic collapsed into chaos within minutes. Spaceport access roads filled with panicked civilians desperate to reach the shuttles. Some were crying, others were shouting, and a few just stood, frozen, stunned that their safe little world was suddenly a war zone. Rian Harper ran down the main terminal steps, barking orders at his crew who were already shoving emergency kits and med stations into place. He waved off one security officer holding a clipboard. "We don't need signatures or forms today. Just put people on anything with an engine and get them off this rock." The man hesitated, mumbling something about safety regulations, and Ryan snapped back. "Buddy, in about 20 minutes, safety is going to look like a luxury cruise. Now move." On the orbital defense station, Lieutenant Karen Simmons sat at her console listening to dozens of distress calls all crashing into her headset at once. Voices from cargo captains, private yachts, even crop dusters pressed into emergency work. One frantic voice broke through the noise, a passenger shuttle pilot screaming that he had alien interceptors on his tail. The channel cut off mid-sentence, replaced by static. Karen took a slow, shaky breath and focused back on her instruments, because if she stopped to think about the screaming, she would freeze too. Commander James Donovan scanned his tactical display, watching the Vraxx ships close in. The enemy formation moved like a living organism, each ship sliding into perfect position as if it already knew every human escape path. His stomach twisted when he recognized the signature of their smaller bioships, the ones designed to tear through fleeing transports like hawks through pigeons. "We've got minutes, not hours," he muttered, then keyed his fleet channel. "All ships form a defensive cordon around the primary escape routes. Buy the civilians sometime, even if it kills us. Which, let's be honest, it probably will. The yachts." First Vraxx landing pods hit the ground outside New Boston like meteors, throwing up fire and debris. The pods split open, spilling out insectoid horrors 12 feet tall, with segmented legs and bladed arms gleaming like wet obsidian. Their bodies pulsed faintly under armored plating, and their eyes glowed with a cold intelligence that didn't care about surrender or prisoners. They shrieked as they moved, a metallic sound that made every human nearby flinch. Security Chief Danny Morales had been preparing for civil unrest, not alien death squads, but he didn't hesitate. "Open fire!" His voice cut across the comms, as he and his squad unleashed everything they had. Bullets sparked and pinged uselessly off the alien armor. Danny ducked behind a burned-out truck as one alien's blade arm carved through a barricade like it was paper. "Okay," he muttered, fumbling for another magazine. "We're going to need bigger guns, or maybe a miracle, preferably both." His deputy gave him a quick look and said, "You think miracles come standard on Tuesdays?" Danny just grinned grimly and replied, "Today they better." At the spaceport, crowds surged against security gates, desperate to board anything that could fly. Ryan sprinted toward the main terminal where families clutched children, some crying, some whispering prayers, and others just staring blankly. He climbed onto a cargo crate and yelled over the noise. "Listen up. We are boarding by groups. Priority for kids and medical cases first. If you're not on the first round, you wait for the next shuttle. Don't argue, don't push, we will. Get as many as we can out of here." People quieted for a moment, then the roar of panic started again as an alien roar echoed in the distance. Above, Captain Lisa Grant aboard the destroyer. Valiant was the first to meet the Vraxx in orbit. Her weapons officer fired a full missile, spread at the closest bioship. Dozens of warheads streaking through the void in a perfect formation. Explosions bloomed against the alien hull like fireworks. But when the light cleared, the bioship was still coming, its pulsing organic skin rippling as though it had just shrugged off a mosquito bite. Lisa gritted her teeth and muttered, "Yeah, that's fair, totally fair," then ordered, "All hands brace, they're coming in hot." Vraxx interceptors swarmed like hornets, their movement unnatural, almost flowing as if every turn was choreographed. Human transport pilots screamed for help as alien fighters shredded their escorts. The defense station's main guns opened, fire filling space with energy bolts and shrapnel clouds, but it was like swatting bees with a broom. A shuttle exploded on re-entry trajectory, lighting up the sky for everyone on the ground to see. Panic spread faster than any order Ryan could shout on the streets. Danny's team fell back block by block, using explosives and heavy rifles just to slow the alien advance. Every shot felt pointless, but slowing them by even seconds meant another. Kid might make it to a shuttle. Danny ducked behind a wall as another alien screeched past, slicing through concrete like it was foam. "You ever see anything move like that?" one of his officers gasped. Danny replied, "Only in nightmares. Now shut up and keep firing." As the chaos built, Ryan stared up at the sky, at the plumes of smoke trailing from overworked shuttles, and the growing flashes of distant combat in orbit. "We are so screwed," he muttered, then corrected himself quietly. "Unless someone out there pulls a miracle out of their ass right now." He didn't know yet that someone would. The alien warriors poured into New Boston's outskirts like a nightmare-given form, their shrieks echoing off steel towers as if the city itself were screaming. Danny Morales and his security teams fired from hastily built barricades, ducking between vehicles and shattered storefronts, trying to slow the alien tide. Each Vraxx creature towered above them, its bladed limbs cutting through walls, cars, and people with horrifying ease. Danny cursed under his breath as he swapped magazines, then yelled into his comm, "Fall back to the secondary line! I repeat, fall back! We're not dying for a parking lot!" One officer hesitated, still firing from behind a burned transport. "But Chief, we're holding them here!" Danny barked back. "Look around! Does this look like we're holding anything? Move, before you get turned into fancy alien sushi!" On the spaceport tarmac, Ryan Harper shouted himself hoarse-trying to keep some kind of order. Shuttles were lifting off overloaded, engines whining under the weight, yet it still wasn't enough. Every takeoff left hundreds on the ground, staring up with hollow eyes as the ships disappeared into the smoky sky. Ryan grabbed one stubborn father by the collar when the man refused to leave his personal hovercar behind. "Buddy, you got two choices. Leave the car or stay with the car. Guess which one burns better when aliens start chewing on it?" The man blinked, nodded once, and ran for the shuttle ramp, dragging his kids along in orbit. The destroyer Valiant was barely holding together. Lisa Grant stood on her bridge, gripping the rail as alarms screamed. Acid weapons from a Vraxx bioship had eaten through 2 decks, and parasite drones were swarming the hull like locusts. Her weapons officer yelled, "Shields failing! We can't hold this position!" Lisa snapped back. "Then don't hold it. Fall back toward the station and keep those bastards off the transports. We're buying time, not medals." She allowed herself one dry laugh. "Though if we live, I'm taking all the medals anyway, Commander." James Donovan watched the tactical feed with growing dread. Alien ships were cutting off escape vectors one by one, choking the routes out of the system like a net drawing tight. Transports tried weaving between gaps only to be pounced by living. Fighters that moved like they were all sharing the same mind. Human pilots fought hard, desperate to keep civilians alive, but their losses were stacking fast. James keyed into Ryan's channel, his voice steady but grim. "Harper, keep loading them. Everyone you launch is a win. We'll hold orbit as long as we can," Ryan answered between orders, his voice strained. "You do that, Commander. We'll keep shoving people into every hull with an engine. Not sure how long we'll hold down here either. They're almost at the gates." Danny's voice cut in on the emergency frequency, filled with static and gunfire. Spaceport perimeters compromised. Repeat, compromised. We're pulling back to the internal barricades. I've got wounded, and we're running out of ammo." There was a pause. Then he added in a lower voice, "If anyone has a miracle handy, now would be a really sweet time." The Vraxx ground forces crashed into the secondary barricades moments later. Danny and his officers triggered charges that collapsed entire overpasses onto alien units, buying precious seconds as shuttles screamed into the air. One alien brute leaped straight over the wreckage, slamming down in front of them. It screeched, swinging its blade arm in a wide arc. Danny fired his rifle point-blank into its face, shouting, "You ugly bug-eyed son of a—" The rest of his sentence was lost in the alien's death cry as it toppled, twitching. His deputy exhaled hard. "You're insane, Chief." Danny grinned without humor. "Yeah, well, crazy keeps me alive. For now." At the control station, Karen Simmons monitored dozens of comm channels at once, trying to keep her voice level as transport after transport screamed for escort. One pilot sobbed into the mic, "They're on us, I can't—" Static swallowed the rest. Karen closed her eyes for half a second, then keyed the emergency beacon again, whispering as though someone could hear her. "Someone please be out there. Anyone." Out the viewport, flashes of combat lit the upper atmosphere, glowing like silent fireworks. People on the ground could see it too, every explosion a reminder that their world was dying by the minute. Ryan climbed onto a loader truck and shouted above the chaos, "Keep moving! Keep your heads down! If you've got a seat, take it. If you don't, wait for the next one and pray it gets here before those things do." Behind him, the distinct metallic roar of Vraxx warriors echoed closer. Danny stumbled into view with half his team, blood on his arm and his eyes wide. "Ryan, they're inside the perimeter. We need to go now, or this spaceport becomes a buffet." Ryan glanced skyward again. Shuttles, smoke, distant explosions. "Unless someone up there gives us a damn miracle," he muttered. "We're already done." Karen Simmons's console wailed like a banshee as a new reading appeared on her display. At first, she thought her system had finally given up under the load because nothing that size should have been moving that fast. She re-ran the scan twice, then just stared at the results. Whatever was arriving was so big her computer flagged it as a possible moon. She whispered to herself, "That can't be right." Commander James Donovan heard it too, leaning over her shoulder. One look at the data made his eyes go wide, and for the first time since the alarms had sounded, his lips curled into something almost like a smile. "Patch me through to all units," he said, voice steady but with an edge of disbelief. "We might have just found our miracle." The sky tore itself apart in a flash of light as a ship unlike anything the colony had ever seen dropped out of hyperspace. The UEE's Titan emerged, its kilometer-and-a-half hull gleaming silver even against the void. Massive railgun spines lined its surface, and energy shields rippled across its flanks like an ocean storm. Every human pilot still alive stopped talking. For a second, just to stare on Titan's bridge, Captain Scott Henderson adjusted his collar, calm as if he were pulling into a parking lot instead of a war zone. "Status," he said, strolling toward the central display as if 100 alien ships weren't already turning toward them. His weapons officer, Helen Parker, grinned as she punched in firing solutions. "Main battery locked on their lead. Ship, recommend we say hello properly." Henderson smirked. "Then let's not be rude. Fire." 6 railgun slugs screamed out at near light speed, invisible except for the faint trails they left behind. The alien command ship didn't even have time to react. It simply ceased to exist, replaced by a blooming cloud of plasma that lit up half the tactical screen. Vraxx formations hesitated, their bioluminescent hulls flickering in what looked suspiciously like confusion. James Donovan, watching from his battered frigate, laughed once, the sound raw and full of disbelief. "Holy hell, we actually have teeth," he muttered, then keyed his comm. "All units, clear firing lanes. Titan's here to do some house cleaning." On Titan, Helen Parker was already lining up the next salvo. "Targets 1 through 6 locked. This is going to get messy. Henderson shrugged. Messy's fine, long as it's their mess, not ours. The Titan opened fire again. Railguns pounding the alien fleet while secondary batteries of pulse lasers and missile pods tore through swarms of interceptors. Combat drones launched from belly bays, darting between enemy ships like angry hornets. Their pilots safe inside Titan and jacked into the machines through quantum links. Vraxx fighters tried to swarm them as they had with human transports earlier, but now they were the ones falling in clouds of burning wreckage. Karen Simmons gripped her console, eyes wide as she watched alien formations break apart for the first time since the war began. "They're running," she whispered. James allowed himself a grim grin. "Yeah, turns out they don't like it when someone punches back. Who knew?" Down on the surface, Ryan Harper heard the new chatter over emergency channels. His eyes flicked to the sky where flashes of light streaked in rapid succession like lightning frozen in place. "What is that?" he asked, no one in particular. Danny Morales, leaning against a scorched wall and clutching his bleeding arm, squinted up and smiled weakly. "I don't know, man. But if it's ours, I'm buying it a drink when this is over." Ryan nodded, then yelled to his evac team. "You heard the man. Keep loading. We're not dead yet." Back in orbit, Henderson's calm voice filled every human channel. "All units, this is Earth Command Dreadnought Titan. Stay clear of our firing lanes and prepare for counteroffensive operations. We are taking the lead." One transport pilot, clearly on the edge of a breakdown, keyed up and muttered, Roger that, Titan, and thank you for the literal divine intervention." Henderson cracked a grin, but didn't answer, too busy ordering the next strike package. The Vraxx fleet tried to regroup, their once perfect formations stuttering as they adapted to an enemy they hadn't expected. But they were too late. Every railgun shot was catastrophic. Every missile volley chewed holes in their numbers. The swarm that had closed in like a predator now moved like prey, scattering, twisting, colliding with one another as they fled. On the ground, Danny's team noticed it first. The alien warriors hesitating, their shrieks less coordinated, their strikes disorganized. Danny smirked, half delirious from exhaustion and adrenaline. "Look at that. Even bug bastards know when to cut and run." Ryan shot him a look. "Don't jinx it. I still have to get 1,000,000 people out of here." Danny shrugged. "Hey, I'm just saying. Maybe keep the bar open for once we survive." For the first time since the alarms sounded, hope settled across the colony like a cautious whisper. The nightmare wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time, it felt like humanity had a chance. The battle ended not with cheers, but with silence. A strange silence that hung heavy over New Haven. The Vraxx fleet, once a wall of death stretching across the sky, was gone, ripped apart by the Titan's relentless fire. Scattered wreckage burned. In orbit, some of it still glowing as it fell into the atmosphere like fiery comets. On the ground, Danny Morales leaned against a destroyed barricade, helmet under his arm and blood drying on his cheek. Alien corpses littered the streets, their armor pitted and charred from Marine plasma rifles and Titan's orbital strikes. Powered armored Marines now moved methodically through the city, clearing pockets of resistance and securing what remained of the colony. Danny watched one Marine vault an overturned bus like it was a toy, land next to an alien brute, and drop it with 2 shots. He whistled low. "Okay. Remind me never to pick a fight with anyone wearing that suit." Ryan Harper limped past him, headset still on, barking at evac teams to reverse flow and bring people back home. "We're bringing them back," he said breathlessly. "We're actually bringing them back." Danny chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, I'll be damned. We didn't die." Ryan gave him a sideways look. "Don't get too comfortable. I'm pretty sure my blood pressure just permanently moved into the emergency range." Above, on Titan's bridge, Captain Scott Henderson watched the tactical display shrink from a storm of hostile contacts to scattered glowing debris. Helen Parker locked her console and leaned back with a long sigh. That's it. Last hostile confirmed down. No active targets remaining. Henderson nodded slowly, his expression calm, but his eyes sharp. Then let's hold position and begin rescue coordination. And get engineering started on cleanup. We ran the railguns hot enough to fry eggs. He keyed the all-system channel. Citizens of New Haven, this is Captain Henderson of Earth Command Dreadnought Titan. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We will remain in orbit to ensure your safety and support reconstruction. You are safe for now. Karen Simmons sat back in her chair on the defense station, staring at her screen as tears pricked her eyes. For hours, she had listened to people screaming for help, watched their signals vanish into static. And now there was silence, but it was a silence of survival, not death. We actually won, she whispered to herself, half afraid the universe would correct her back in the medbay. Ryan's evac staff tended to wounded civilians and soldiers alike. Danny sat on a cot, getting his arm patched up, while still cracking jokes at the nurse. You know, I'm starting to think I should start charging the aliens rent for the holes they keep putting in me. The nurse rolled her eyes. Maybe. Try not getting stabbed next time, Danny grinned. Where's the fun in that? While relief spread across the colony, Titan's science teams combed through captured alien data. What they found froze the bridge in silence. The fleet they had just destroyed wasn't an invasion force, not really. It was a scout group. The Vraxx were part of something much larger, a network of hive fleets spread across multiple star systems. These scouts had been testing human responses, probing weaknesses, preparing the way for something far worse. Henderson stood at the briefing table, staring at the decoded alien data. So this wasn't them throwing everything at us, he said quietly. Intelligence Officer Nancy Turner shook her head. No, sir, this was them, knocking on the door. The main fleets are somewhere deeper in the galaxy. They'll know we fought back, and next time, they'll bring everything. Henderson exhaled slowly, then tapped the comm. Tell Command to expedite Dreadnought production. Titan won't be the only one out here for long. We just bought humanity time, but not much. On the surface, families reunited in tearful embraces, relief washing over a city that only hours earlier had been braced for annihilation. Children stared up at the silver bulk of Titan gleaming in orbit, whispering as if it were some kind of myth made real. For them, it was. A ship that arrived when everything seemed lost. Proof that humanity could hit back. James Donovan stood on the observation deck of his damaged frigate, looking at Titan's silhouette. Everything had changed in a single day. Humanity had gone, from prey to something the Vraxx would have to fear. Still, he knew the truth. This was only the first battle. Karen joined him, arms crossed as she stared at the same silver shape. Think we can really win this? James sipped cold coffee from a cracked mug and gave a dry smile. No idea, but at least we've got a fighting chance now, and I'll take chance over running any day. The war was far from over, but for now on New Haven, life returned, fragile but defiant. People swept rubble from streets, rebuilt walls, and made plans for tomorrow. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, a much larger storm gathered, one the Vraxx were certain would crush humanity, once and for all. What they didn't know yet was that humanity had just learned to fight back.